Keith Caller from Foster and Partners. Actually, got several questions, but I'll give you the first one. Data provenance, trust. Okay, you talked about it from the other end, which is privacy. Recently, you probably have seen that someone happened to uncover a network of Twitter bots, which was generating fake Twitter messages, which goes on to generate behavioural change, in the same way that misinformation created behavioural change in the Second World War and led to outcomes. How do those who are supposedly collecting information that comes supposedly from human sources decide on the provenance of that data?
Well, okay, so any of the systems that we've built that retrieve information from mobile phones, you've got the way of looking at it as coming in from a mobile phone. The only other thing I can think of is if you can analyze certain trends in behavior. Like, for example, if something goes way off subject, it'll look different when you trend that. But it is very subtle and very difficult, but it's not my particular field. Maybe you guys know more about that.
Well, we're doing a fair bit of work on sentiment analysis. I've got one project on the go at the moment with some guys about identifying trends in radicalisation on social media, which kind of is addressing exactly that problem, really. Understanding, trusting the data as it appears, and understanding where it comes from and what the likely reactions and outcomes will be related to that data. And it is a challenge, actually, because bots are becoming more and more sophisticated in their... Twitter is an enormous corpus of data. It's very easy for a bot to mimic what is human behaviour, because the majority of it is still human behaviour. There will come a point, possibly, when the majority of it is non-human behaviour, which would be a very interesting position to be in from an analytics point of view. But it's a problem. It's not ever going to go away, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say that you take appropriate precautions, and so we have on our system we have certain things in place to verify whether somebody is genuinely commenting, whether they're from that area, those kind of things. But it's not foolproof. I mean, if somebody wanted to invest a lot of money in creating a bot to skew the results, then I've no doubt they probably could. But in a neighbourhood context, that's fairly unlikely. But you do, if you are collecting, and in our case, providing some assurance of the veracity of information, then you do have to have procedures in place to verify it. And that, from our point of view, that's still a human looking at patterns and checking whether they look normal or not.
I think it depends a lot also on the action. What is the expected action from the information that you're getting, and depends on the criticality of this action is how much secondary checks you're going to have in parallel to take that action. If it's just based on information and we're talking just about how accurate some data is, which could actually affect some real action, I think you have to balance it. You have to balance between the two. But as you just mentioned, there are now no 100% solutions today that they detect that this is not a real person.
Sorry, I just have one more question, if I can. Yeah. There's a lot of emphasis on getting sensing technology out there, engaging with citizens and stuff like that, putting sense in. I'm just interested on your views as to whether or not there's the potential for a kind of digital underclass to develop. Among the poor, among those who are unable to engage or unwilling to engage with this kind of thing, and how local authorities who have a duty to all of their citizens can ensure that that kind of digital or data underclass doesn't appear.
It's really interesting. It becomes a barrier rather than reducing barriers. Yeah, there was a Black Mirror episode that was sort of Charlie Brooker, very dark humour thing that was kind of along those lines. But yeah. Becomes a barrier, or there's a digital underclass.
There is. I mean, there are in all sorts of different levels, and the digital underclass that you're mentioning about is about people with very low income or no income whatsoever, impossible to get online. Not just getting on board with the whole development that's happening. There are plans, right? There are projects in place today that they are matching kind of social housing with also social services that include the digital inclusion into these social services, and it is somehow being addressed. You have also an age problem where people that they're much more elderly, they will not also socialize using a digital form. And I mean, for us, for Citiverb, it was something that came up immediately, and we had to find ways to engage people also with maybe more traditional ways, through leaflets, through elements on the street, and still ways of doing it maybe the old way. So we have to consider it. It is something that hopefully, as we're moving forward, is going to become less of a problem. But it is something that today is critical for everybody to address. So we cannot base anything just on digital connectivity.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, we find that age is more of a division between digital and digitally excluded than income per se or levels of poverty. And the younger people tend to find a way of having a digital gadget, however poor an area, however much poverty they're in. But I completely agree. You have to find ways of doing stuff non-digitally, and so I think the interesting thing is how the non-digital, how the kind of whole thing works together, and how the non-digital and the digital work together. And so we do really lo-fi stuff, like we can spit out a paper form that's in exactly the same format as the information that we've got online, and then we have a way of uploading it, through OCR and digitization and stuff. So all of the data ends up in the same place, so you can then do all the reporting and output and infographics and stuff you want. But there's people filling in forms where that's appropriate.
Anything to add?
I was just going to add, there's getting people access, but there's also a barrier where people can get involved in the creation as well. I think my worry is that for example, in the Organicity project that I'm on, it's with the Future Cities Catapult. One of the things that I see a lot when I go along to the co-creation sessions is that you've got lots of people with brilliant ideas of how they can improve cities, and they would love an app to do this and that and the other. But it's just they've never been taught any programming. They're not of the generation that got taught programming. And in fact, nobody is between my age and my son's age, so for some reason. But anyway, that's a problem, because they can't do it themselves, and they can't get access to coders. And coders, frankly, are being paid by everybody and anybody big money. Why would they go, unless they're being nice, to go and work with someone that has this brilliant idea? And there's none of that dating that exists where you've got, I will code for friendship or something like that. I don't know what the motivation would be, because they're better paid. So this is it. So there's a barrier there where, brilliant ideas may not get any further because there's just not the skills.
Some sort of swipe right.
Yeah.
Coders.
There's a lot. I mean, I'm doing some work on SME engagement where I've said we're delivering coding as part of our project work. So we're trying to create access. And the Open University, our whole ethos is about being open. So although it's not kind of smart city stuff, our solution to inclusivity in our learning platforms is to provide people with the appropriate equipment. And in MK Smart, in our project, to overcome areas of deprivation in our city where digital inclusivity was less, we just went out and ran meetings in village halls and stuff, and we had one person with an iPad filling in forms for people who didn't have iPads. So it's not impossible, but it's you have to be aware of it, I think.
Yeah, great. Peter?
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in the panel's view on perhaps using market segmentation analysis tools to scale up the results you're getting. So such as Mosaic, Experian Mosaic, where you can segment households and get any results from those households to give a sort of 95% propensity to behave similar to other people in that group. And if you've got data from those households, you can scale your data. And Mike, I noticed some of your results, the figures were quite low. So do you use any of those techniques to scale the data to complete the dashboards to make them a more accurate picture of a sort of truer representation of local feedback?
Yeah. I mean, depending on the projects and where they are, we get kind of double figures. So kind of between 10 and 20% of the adult population is what we aim for, but that's still pretty low, as you say. And yes, we do that in certain situations. So we can, and we have weighted the results based on Mosaic and other data that gives us the ability to scale the results that we have up to what would, 100% of the population would look like. And I think that's a useful technique. You also have to be clear about what you're doing, I think, because you are scaling up that data, and in certain circumstances, depending on the number of segments you have, it may not be a statistically valid way of presenting it. So I think you just have to be open about what you're doing.
Any other views on that?
I mean, for us, the evaluation of the impact for pretty much what we do is at the moment handled mainly from the University of Manchester. Unfortunately, in the specific project that I'm covering here is something that we are focusing on a very narrow band of the city, which really makes it very difficult to scale the data to much more outside the city. We're focusing on students or maybe workers because we're focusing really on the corridor, and we have very low residential kind of participation into what we do. So it has made it difficult to almost create a kind of a template of how this would be scaled in general into a city. So I wait to see what University of Manchester will come up with, but at the moment we don't have anything like that.
Okay. I have another little question. I'm interested in, you've got an art thing going in.
Yes.
It's technical, I don't want to lose you. An art thing, and it's engaging in some way. Mm-hmm. How are you going to collect? Are you going to collect any feedback? Gaze, watching, or what sort of how is that fed back?
In all the use cases, we are. I mean, this is something now. And by the way, we are working. We have a privacy committee also in the project, which Petras is, by the way, big key member in, to make sure that we don't violate people's data on this. But we are creating where almost every use case has a parallel element. So for every use case that we created, because this is a demonstrator, it's a demonstrator project, so it has to measure impact. So for every use case that we create, there is the design element, there is the technical reference of how we implement it, and of course there is the kind of the element in which we're putting it there and we're putting in production. But there's also a demonstration element. So what we're doing is we are putting technology around that is designed not to make the use case, but how do we measure the use case. So what you mentioned about the gauging and everything else, yes, all the artwork will have gauging, including the bits that we're putting in all the plinths and everything else. We are putting also cameras to detect people's behavior around these plinths. We do have big signs on them that say that they are fully recorded, and we're expecting to see the response of people at the moment,
especially after 11 p.m.
Yeah, there are elements. I mean, the police has a lot to say about this on how you put cameras in a public space, yeah. And we have, I have to say, the gauging. You mentioned gauging is a big challenge because we have to reduce the resolution of the cameras in order not to be able to identify people, and then it makes the gauging very, very difficult to be productive. So we're trying to find the loopholes by informing people, can we actually do it? Still is what you do with this data. So we cannot record any video. We have only to make any kind of calculation or gauging test on the fly, and if anything, on the camera. We should not copy this video anywhere else in order to be compliant. So the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges in the whole project is not so much the technology and the deployment and the effort of deploying it. It's the legislation and the policies around it, and how do you go around them, but how do you change them? How do you suddenly become more realistic about them? And this is an element that I think we're facing. And if anything, this is my biggest risk in the project on not being able to deploy things because of policies and legislation.
Great. Any other questions from the floor? We're going to be bang on time. So in that case, a couple of things to do. I got a bit stuck on music this afternoon, so I've gone with films. So not in order. Julie, Armageddon. Sorry. We had Nick. You were sort of looking at Platform of Platforms, and I've ended up with Sliding Doors as a film.
Why not?
Alan, you were going to out-big big data. That's what I took from it anyway. I don't know, maybe not.
Yep.
So I ended up with Top Gun. It's a slight stretch. And I sort of ended up thinking about common people. I ended up with Pulp, so I'm going to go Pulp Fiction because we went off music. But in a roundabout way, it's utterly irrelevant and fun. So thanks very much to all the speakers. Really, really interesting agenda. There's another event next week which is around the infrastructure side of things, and BRE have got more information on that. Really fascinating series, and I'm sure there'll be more around connected cities coming up in the next few months, so look out for that. A round of applause for all of our speakers. Thank you very much.